Us on the world now. We begin here in Africa, where a business group says close to 70,000 South Africans have expressed interest in moving to the United States following Washington's offer to resettle people from the country's Afrikaner community. The South African Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. says its website received thousands of registrations from persons seeking more information. An executive order signed by President Donald Trump in February says Afrikaners who are descendants of mainly Dutch settlers who arrived in the 17th century could be admitted as refugees as they were allegedly victims of unjust racial discrimination. Now, relations between the U.S. and South Africa have become increasingly strained since Donald Trump became president in January. This month, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law a bill allowing the state to seize land without compensation, providing it is in public interest. South Africa's wide minority also possesses the vast majority of privately held land and wealth in the country. And for more on the search for asylum in the U.S. by South Africa's white minority, well, I'm being joined via Zoom in South Africa by heritage expert and socio-political analyst Musa Sulu for an analysis of the situation. It's good to have you join us on the world now. We've seen President Trump say Afrikaners' descendants are facing state-sanctioned and also racial forms of discrimination. Do you agree with this statement? And is there a consequence of prioritizing the resettlement of a particular community?
Well, thank you very much, my sister. Thank you all around the world, in Nigeria in particular. The issue of the Afrikaners in South Africa is very complex. They arrived here in 1652, mainly from Holland, the Netherlands now, and then also from France and Germany. And they, over the centuries, formed themselves into a nation which they called themselves Afrikaners. It's a very big number of them, close to maybe between 3 and 5 million. And this is the biggest population of white people on the African continent in any country. So then, of course, that was during the colonial era. Then in 1948, they took power and introduced what was called apartheid. Apartheid separated the people and gave more economic power to white people in general, but also the Afrikaners. Economic power, education, cultural heritage, and everything. They really became very much attuned to ensuring that their race is benefiting from everything. Then we had 1994, Nelson Mandela. Most of the land was taken away in 1913 from black people formally through the Land Act. So the act that Mr. Ramaphosa signed now is trying to sort of reverse the impact of that act of 1913 and others that followed after. South Africa has been struggling with trying to create one nation. The late Bishop Desmond Tutu used to call it the Rainbow Nation. But from time to time, as you know, whenever people become desperate about the economic situation of a country, they tend also to draw themselves back to what are known as traditions or traditional enclaves. So over the past, let me say 10, 15 years, the Afrikaners have become very much looking inward unto themselves. And they had come to a conclusion that the laws that were passed between 1994 and now, in order to empower black people, Africans like ourselves, were actually disempowering them. And they called it apartheid in reverse.
Right, Professor, I want to pick you up on that statement. You know, looking at the complex history of apartheid in South Africa, of course, it is of major concern and to the United States. But recently we saw the U.S. cut financial aid to South Africa and also expel the South African ambassador to Washington. Do you think this recent plan by Trump is a way of, you know, improving bilateral relations between both countries?
No, it's not going to improve bilateral relations between the two countries. It's going to make it worse. But I can say to you that the issue of the Afrikaners, from where I stand, is a sideshow The whole issue between Trump and South Africa is about the ICJ case that South Africa took against Israel. And analytically, we can all see that Trump is acting on behalf of Israel to punish South Africa for that. And fortunately for the Afrikaners, there has been an opening there, which they are using to highlight their own plight, to say they're also being discriminated, and therefore they will go to Trump, and they hope that Trump, as he has indicated, will then take them in to the United States. Most of them are farmers, but they're also in very sophisticated tertiary industries. And as I said, they are very central to the economy of the country.
Let's look at the president's response to this. Many believe that South Africa's white minority continues to control most of the nation's private land and wealth. Would you say this may have contributed to President Ramaphosa's decision to sign into law a bill allowing the state to seize land without compensation, which has now led to growing tension between South Africa and the U.S.?
Well, the issue of no compensation is neither here nor there, but it's only that the process that this new law provides makes it difficult, for example, because you can only go to court long after the process has almost been concluded. But the Constitution itself provides for no compensation under certain circumstances. So it's not a new thing. The law itself is not as unconstitutional as people would like to believe it is. It's just that maybe it has not been communicated correctly and made to understand. Expropriation of land happens all over the world. It's not only here in South Africa, usually for public benefit. But what has happened up until now, and it continues to happen, is that government is actually buying land that is in the hands of mainly white farmers at a willing buyer, willing seller kind of rates. Maybe what this law may say is that it's going to be possible for government to pay lesser than the market value of land. The expropriation without compensation happens under very extreme circumstances, where, for example, there's no owner, or the owner is oblique, or maybe the ownership is not very clear. But up till now, because the whole project started in 1996, the program to return land to the hands of Black people has been going on very well.
And it's yet to be seen the impact of this Trump asylum policy in South Africa, what the impact will be really on history and other relations in that country. But thank you for talking to us. Professor Musa Ksulu is a heritage expert and also a social political analyst. Thank you for joining us on The World Now.
I thank you.